So it reads right here, earlier this year, the information analyzed OpenAI's predictions and found that they were on track to post a $14 billion loss in 2026. This was on the heels of OpenAI nearly going bankrupt and experiencing a $6 billion investor bailout at the end of 2024.
You'll see us do a lot more to make the free tier much better over time. I kind of think of ads as like a last resort for us for a business model.
Ads as a last resort. Those were his words. So why is OpenAI's last resort suddenly their new business model?
OpenAI almost went bankrupt. And when you look at the numbers, you begin to understand why people are saying the CEO is losing it. This is Microsoft's own financial report. In one single quarter, Microsoft recorded a $4.1 billion loss from its 27% stake in OpenAI. Do the calculation. That implies OpenAI lost roughly $15.2 billion in just 3 months. 3 months. Let that sit for a moment.
And so if there's one company people wish to see a downfall for, it is very much OpenAI.
Now compare that to revenue. In the first half of 2025, OpenAI generated around $4.3 billion in revenue. That sounds impressive until you realize the losses are crushing it. Analysts estimate that full-year revenue may reach $12.7 billion. That sounds large, but when you are losing more than $15 billion in one quarter, what exactly are we celebrating? Growth? Or acceleration toward a wall?
If losses grew to that level, OpenAI would be seen as a doomed venture.
It gets worse when you look at the cost structure. For every single dollar OpenAI adds in revenue growth, it reportedly costs them about $7.77. Think about that. You earn $1 and burn almost $8 to get it. That is not scaling. That is lighting cash on fire and calling it innovation. And we are supposed to believe this is sustainable until 2030?
So for every dollar of revenue growth OpenAI has, it is costing them $7.77. For every dollar they make, they're losing $7.77. That's not a viable business. So yeah, it's bad.
Some projections say if fresh funding does not keep flowing, OpenAI could run out of money by mid-2027. That is not some random social media rumor. Analysts have been openly modeling this scenario. And what is the solution? Raise more capital. Always raise more capital. When the math does not work, just make the number bigger. That seems to be the strategy.
This report continues right here that this means that OpenAI is losing about 3 times more money than it's earning and is on track to post a $27 billion net loss by the end of the year rather than $14 billion.
Now let us talk about the user base, because this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. OpenAI has around 800 million weekly active users. 800 million. That is nearly 10% of the world's population. That sounds unstoppable. That sounds like dominance. But here is the catch. Only 5% of those users are actually paying.
OpenAI has 800 million weekly active users, an impressive number, but only 5% are actually paying. That's it, 5%. And that tiny fraction accounts for 70% of the company's recurring revenue.
5%. Out of 800 million. That means roughly 760 million people use it for free. And that tiny 5% is responsible for about 70% of the company's recurring revenue. So the entire business is leaning on a tiny fraction of the audience to carry the financial weight of hundreds of millions of free users. Does that sound stable to you?
But not all of their eggs are in that sector. So OpenAI in particular is in a lot of trouble, and at the same time, companies like Microsoft and Amazon have to deal with similar financial situations and infrastructure outlooks that could be a huge detriment to their ambitions.
Banks and analysts have already done the math. Some models suggest OpenAI needs around 3 billion users by 2030, with at least 10% of them paying. That means doubling the paid conversion rate and nearly quadrupling the user base within a few years. 3 billion weekly users. That is more than a third of the global population. Is that realistic? Or is that wishful thinking dressed up as a projection?
The company burned through $8 billion last year, and according to the information, they're projected to burn more than $40 billion by 2028. One economist believes OpenAI will run out of money by mid-2027. Don't tell that to the AI 2027 guys.
Even if they hit the optimistic scenario of 300 million paid users, that still leaves about 2.7 billion users using the system for free. Those free users cost real money. Servers cost money. Compute costs money. Data centers cost money. Electricity costs money. You cannot feed 3 billion people on good vibes and a vision statement.
As Sam Altman said in his tweet, people don't want to pay. He's right. 760 million people don't want to pay for ChatGPT, and that's exactly why this company is in trouble.
And when only 5% are willing to pay today, what makes leadership think 10% will suddenly pay tomorrow? Subscription fatigue is real. People are drowning in monthly payments, streaming services, music apps, cloud storage, fitness apps, and now another $20 a month for AI. In what economy?
Despite Sam Altman making deals worth $1.4 trillion, the company is hemorrhaging money. He's tried everything to convert free users to paid. He locked GPT-4o behind a paywall, and he's severely limited the usage of the free tier. Nothing's working. Yet somehow he's still making deals with companies and governments as if the money problem will just solve itself.
Look at consumer data. Around 37% of Americans reportedly took on debt just to pay for holiday shopping in 2025. The average new debt was about $1,200. Many carry average credit card balances over $6,500. Reports suggest that between 50 and 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And leadership is confused why 760 million people are not excited to subscribe?
Like, it feels like there are more negatives than pluses right now with the way the economy is being fucked by AI, with the way deepfakes and misinformation is becoming widespread, with the way, people and artists are being replaced, their artwork being stolen, with quality outputs that are far below par.
Which brings us to ads. Because now we see the shift. The same CEO who publicly said ads were a last resort and misaligned incentives is now introducing them. He said ads were unsettling in AI because they distort results. He said he disliked them personally. He said the simplicity of the model was beautiful. Make great AI. Users pay. The rich subsidize the free tier. That was the vision.
Ads plus AI is sort of uniquely unsettling to me.
He said he hates ads, and that ads put companies out of alignment with users. I agree, so why is he adding them?
Now ads are being added. So what changed? Did philosophy change? Or did the bank balance change? When only 5% convert and the burn rate looks like a bonfire, principles suddenly become flexible. Ads are no longer a last resort. They are survival mode. And the tone has shifted from confident builder to defensive operator.
The rich people will pay to give free access to the poors, and OpenAI will improve the free tier over time. So when exactly is the rich going to start paying for the poor people? Because instead of that, he just added ads to the free tier.
He frames it as users wanting free access and not wanting to pay, almost as if it is the public's fault. But who designed the business model? Who chose to subsidize hundreds of millions of free users without a proven revenue engine? Who promised a GI, trillion-dollar transformations, and unlimited compute expansion? Was that the users? Or was that the CEO on stage at tech conferences?
Ads on a Google search are dependent on Google doing badly. Like if it was giving you the best answer, there'd be no reason ever to buy an ad above it. So you kind of you're like, that thing is not quite aligned with me. ChatGPT, maybe it gives you the best answer, maybe it doesn't, but you're paying it, or hopefully y'all are paying it. If ChatGPT were accepting payment to put a worse hotel above a better hotel, that's probably catastrophic for your relationship with ChatGPT.
There is also competition. Gemini is free for many users. Claude is free at certain levels. DeepSeek is free. Microsoft bundles Copilot into products. Google integrates AI into search. When AI becomes embedded everywhere, the standalone subscription loses power. ChatGPT was special when it was first. It is no longer alone, and yet the burn rate continues. The company keeps scaling compute. Leadership argues that scaling compute correlates directly with scaling revenue. Triple the compute, triple the revenue. That is the theory. But if revenue triples while losses quadruple, what exactly is improving? Optics or sustainability?
The same man who said putting ads into AI is uniquely unsettling, now he's praising the Instagram ad algorithm. All of these contradictions spell out one thing. OpenAI has reached last resort level. They're losing roughly 3 times more money than they earn.
At some point, the conversation stops being about innovation and starts being about arithmetic. You cannot outrun math. You cannot promise that AGI will eventually justify today's losses without proving intermediate value. Investors can tolerate vision. They do not tolerate permanent imbalance. So when people say the CEO is losing it, what they really mean is this. The confident speeches are colliding with financial reality. 800 million users sounds powerful. 5% paying sounds fragile. 15 billion lost in a quarter sounds dangerous. Ads being introduced after publicly rejecting them sounds desperate.
Here's what Sam Altman and these tech CEOs seem to miss from their private jet. People cannot afford another subscription. According to LendingTree, 37% of Americans took on debt just to fund holiday shopping in 2025, averaging $1,200 in new debt. And 41% of those people are still paying off last year's holiday bills.
And the question hangs in the air. Is this bold long-term investment? Or is this a company sprinting toward an IPO because private funding is running thin? Because if the model depends on constant capital injection, then the story is not about AI intelligence. It is about financial oxygen. Then there is the too big to fail argument. Some analysts believe OpenAI will not be allowed to collapse. Too many banks are involved. Too many venture funds. Too many strategic relationships. Too much political interest in AI leadership. So perhaps the company survives not because the math works, but because the ecosystem cannot afford for it to fail.
Pointing to the fact that AI can't just benefit a few tech groups, it has to benefit as wide range of individuals and companies as possible. Apparently, he noted that a telltale sign of if it's a bubble would be if only tech groups were benefiting from the rise of AI rather than companies in other sectors.
But that assumption is dangerous, because survival through funding is not the same as survival through profitability. If every year requires larger funding rounds, larger data centers, larger compute budgets, then you are constantly running uphill. Now consider competition. Gemini reached hundreds of millions of monthly users. Claude is growing. Chinese labs are producing smaller, efficient models that perform extremely well. xAI is building gigawatt-scale training clusters at record speed. Compute is no longer exclusive. Talent is mobile. The moat narrows. And talent shuffling is real. Engineers move between labs. Lawsuits swirl. Internal politics surface. There is even a $134 billion lawsuit hanging in the air from a former co-founder challenging structural changes. Whether it succeeds or not, it adds uncertainty. And uncertainty impacts investor confidence.
OpenAI and found that in the first half of this year, they made $4.3 billion in revenue, but in terms of losses, we're looking at $13.5 billion. That is very much in the red.
Meanwhile, leadership continues to defend the burn strategy. Keep investing in compute. Keep scaling training. Run at a loss for a long time if necessary. That is the official stance. It is framed as rational. As long as models keep improving rapidly, the investment is justified. But here is the tension. GPT-5 was hyped as a leap. Many users described it as incremental. Some complained of increased hallucinations. If improvements slow while costs remain exponential, the argument weakens. If AI agents do not revolutionize workforce productivity at scale, the revenue expansion narrative loses force.
So in the first half of this year, OpenAI lost as much money as they were predicted to lose for the entirety of next year. It was predicted that OpenAI's losses would be as much as $14 billion in 2026. But as it turns out, even in the first half of 2025, they managed to lose close to that, $13.5 billion.
Look at corporate adoption. Claims of AI doing 30 to 50% of internal work exist. Yet headcounts at some companies rise rather than fall. Productivity gains are uneven. Customer service automation improves efficiency, but it does not eliminate the need for massive human teams across every department. So the core question remains, is OpenAI on a steep upward curve toward a transformative payoff? Or is it sprinting through capital in hopes that a breakthrough arrives before the runway ends? The CEO projects confidence. Public messaging leans into inevitability. Artificial general intelligence is framed as the horizon. Cure diseases, transform industries, accelerate science. All powerful visions. But investors do not invest in visions alone. They invest in pathways.
With companies like these projecting that DRAM drought and shortage could last until at least 2028. So for consumers who, are enthusiasts of PC and of electronics, and just the general masses who buy electronics that feature any semblance of RAM or memory, are about to get fucked.
And right now the pathway is expensive, extremely expensive, with quarterly losses that dwarf annual revenues, with free user bases that overwhelm paid conversion, with viral video apps that consume compute faster than they produce cash, with funding rounds that grow larger every year. So is this a company losing it, or is this a company betting everything on being first to something historic? That depends on one thing: whether scaling compute truly scales intelligence at the pace leadership promises. Because if it does, this burn becomes strategic. If it does not, this burn becomes catastrophic.